Good morning and welcome to Rise and Shine, coming to you live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State. And of course, here on Rise and Shine, we always make sure that we talk Nigeria and take you around the latest developments and happenings as concerns your welfare, my welfare, our collective growth as a people. And of course, today is the last day. I can imagine a lot of people being thankful and happy about the fact that it's Friday already. And they are getting ready for the weekend groove. A lot of people have gotten, marriages fixed for tonight or this evening rather, tomorrow, Saturday, and of course Sunday. So for those of us who've got parties to attend, congratulations and kudos. Those of us who have money to organize one party or the other during this economy, well, we wish you the very best. Congratulations. I envy you guys. But we know that as far as Nigeria is concerned, the end result of the subsidy removal is still biting very hard on millions of homes across the country. And of course, the disparity and the fear that there is a likelihood, regardless of the comment from the President Ahmed Bola Tinubu, that he is going to stabilize the price of petrol. Nigerians are still worried. And the questions, the streets are asking is if this is actually sustainable, and how does the president intend to ensure that he maintains the price as far as the, petroleum products in Nigeria is concerned. Well, a lot of things are going to be said this morning, as always, but I encourage you to join us on our socials at spectrumtv.ng. We're always streaming live on YouTube and, of course, Facebook and other social media platforms. And that's to tell you that we, love the fact that you're always there with us. And not forgetting that at this point in time, we are looking at, gaining sponsorship and collaboration. So if you love one aspect or all of Rise and Shine, you can just give us a call. We're a phone call away and tell us, oh, I'd like to sponsor this segment of Rise and Shine on Spectrum TV. I'd like to be part of this segment of Rise and Shine. And of course, we will be delighted to have you sponsor Rise and Shine and help us continue to be here to serve you, to talk Nigeria. That being said, if I'm asked what the biggest story for the day is, I would say a little bit on the issue where the ECOWAS have said the force will be made ready for combat in Niger Republic as a result of the military junta. And of course, back here, it's been a lot of arguments on the street about the palliative that the federal government has said it has released to the different states. We're already seeing, Shun State, the APC alleging that the governor of the state, Adeleke, has been hoarding the palliative that has been sent to the state by the federal government. It's going to be a little bit interesting when we get to see the back and forth bickering that will be coming out as a result of the palliative sent to the respective states. So this story and a lot of other stories happening in Nigeria is going to be our focus this morning as we talk Nigeria. I'd like to appreciate you as always for being here. And of course, I'm not always going to be here alone. I have the adorable partner of mine who is always, here to bring on the lively chairs and the smiles to, the set so that we can have many, many conversations. Good morning, Uya. Welcome. How are you today?
Good morning, Francis. So good just sitting by and hearing you reel out, all of those good things. And I like the way you, I'd have called the constructive. I will tell you now. I'll tell you later.
Okay, behind the scenes.
Yeah, I'll tell you behind the scenes. But it was so good. I was like, Francis is spot on. But bigger stories, like you said, news of palliatives, is everywhere, here and there. 5 billion naira worth of palliatives released to state governments. So we're talking 36 state governments receiving palliatives from the federal government as of yesterday to be able to cushion the effect of subsidy removal. But how much of this is a reality indeed in our state governments? And have state governors even come out to actualize, say yes, we have received this 5 billion worth of palliatives, and this are the ways we intend to go about distributing it. First of all, I hope it is not as the federal government has already released these palliatives that state governments will now start considering setting up committees naming chairmen of committees to be able to distribute these palliatives. The conversations around palliatives have been going on for at least it has been going on intensely, at least for the last 1 month. It's expected that state governments would have been able to, work around the modalities on how this palliatives are going to be distributed, by local governments. How are we actualizing who exactly is the, most vulnerable in our societies? And when you say 5 billion naira worth of, 5 billion worth of palliatives, is this going to be able to even sustain or touch, the average person who is vulnerable? I remember, being in a tricycle, in the course of all of this, and I remember, the operators just conversing amongst themselves. People like us, how will these palliatives reach us, And they're complaining, say all we want is just fuel to be able to do our businesses. So it's a lot at this time, even as we are looking at what seems to be a good news. But I keep on asking, when this looks like a good news, to what extent can we celebrate, as a people?
Well, to what extent can we celebrate as a people? Yesterday, just being part of, on my way back from work, I was in this minibus, and the conversation were around the fact that state governors are not even revealing exactly what the palliative is being made of. What are we looking at? Is it just bags of rice? Is it bags of rice, onions, and other consumables? Do we have monetary attachment to it? And when you're talking about, all of these, it goes back to the questions that Nigerians asked before the palliative even came into existence. Are we going to look back at the era of the COVID-19 where we had, multinationals, international donor agencies giving stuffs to Nigeria, and then all of those things just ended up in people's warehouses across Nigeria, when for a fact Nigerians were dying literally on a daily basis of hunger. And of course, it goes back to the question of accountability, transparency, and openness in government. You know that back here in Akwa Ibom State, for instance, there was an 18-man, palliative committee sat, comprising of members of the state excos, the organized labor, NLC, TUC, people picked across the different strata of society as stakeholders. But at this point in time, we are yet to see, apart from for instance, like using Akwa Ibom now as an example, apart from the bags of rice that the governor openly admitted to collecting from this federal government, we are yet to see any other thing, any other comment coming from the state government. We also know that the palliative distributing committee was also saddled with the responsibility of looking at how this will be distributed and what the state government can do to also add its own part of a contribution to cushioning the effect of the fuel subsidy removal. So as long as we do not have state governors being transparent enough to tell their people, this is how much we have gotten from the federal government, this item, that item are the items that the federal government has sent, amounting to this amount of money, and this is how we intend to share it, or this is what the state government is now going to add. Governor Adeleke is already being accused of having received the palliative for more than 12 days before, yesterday being Thursday. But if you look at 12 days before yesterday being Thursday, that means it's running into 2 weeks. And of course, it is yet to be distributed as alleged by the APC. At this point, it's just basically allegations. We've not also seen comment from Adeleke. I hope to see that anytime soon.
APC in Osun State
exactly
against the PDP governor.
Exactly so.
You know the tendencies that we have within Nigeria. Everything must be politicized, to fit whoever is wearing the shoe. Adeleke is, a PDP governor under the APC government. Some people might just be trying to, make, some propaganda out of it, because if the information just came out yesterday by Babagana Zulu, out of the meeting they had with the Vice President Kashim Shettima, their council meeting, the information just came out yesterday. How come Osun State had received theirs over 12 days ago? And it still takes us back to the same conversation I said earlier. Even if these palliatives had been sent out to Osun State 12 days ago, part of the delays we will see in distributing these palliatives across states, if at all the governments of the day want to do the right thing, will be that modalities were not put in place prior to the receiving of these palliatives, to be able to once we receive it from the federal government, we disseminate it at once to the people that must be receiving it. still looking at some of the speculations that we have, there's news that the federal government has mandated each state to buy 100,000 bags of rice, beans, and other food items for citizens to cushion the drastic effects of the removal of fuel subsidy. Now, when we say we are buying 100 bags of rice and beans and all of that, when we say that, citizens are suffering because of the effect of removal of subsidy, I beg to say that it goes beyond food. It actually does go beyond food. There is transportation. There is health care, as part of these things. I was reading, an article in the course of the week, and Nigerians are just, begging each other, making jest out of it also. Endeavor not to fall ill at this time because, pharmaceutical products have gone, up in prices. If you fall ill, issues that you could have handled with 5,000, 6,000 back in the day, you're going to be clamoring for not less than 10,000 to be able to just, handle malaria, typhoid, and other related issues, just doing, over-the-counter medication with the pharmacist. So these are, much more pressing issues than saying we are going to buy 100,000 bags of rice and then we'll come and share 50-50 cups out of that too. That's not even
it's laughable.
No, but it's the reality.
You're even talking about 50 bags of rice.
Like we said, nobody is going to get a bag of rice from the federal government.
You're even talking about 50 cups of rice. Who tells you it's going to be up to 50 cups of rice? You're looking at a paltry, maybe 18 cups of rice, a custard, or even lesser. As far as palliative is concerned in this country, there is literally no way you can guarantee that what is being sent to one family can take that family for a whole day successfully. A whole day. I'm not even talking about a week. I'm talking about just a whole day. And talking about palliative, recall that when all of this started, we had the likes of Akite Njaituk, Ezekiel Njaituk, and other notable technocrats in Nigeria writing to the presidency, proffering solutions, the likely possibilities of things that should be done. I don't know. It's like the leadership of Nigeria is just hell-bent in just putting people through more stress, more trouble, more pain, more suffering, more hunger. Because how do you get to release 5 billion naira to the respective states? You're giving 42% as loan to the state government and then 52 as grants. Regardless, whatever the scenario is, how about channeling this money into actually addressing the basic things that we can look back in 2 years, in 1 year, in 4 years to say, these were the palliative of the federal government, and this has been the things that has been achieved. It is different, completely different for you to give somebody food to eat, as opposed to actually teaching that person or giving that person the enabling environment to get food for himself. These two scenarios are completely, different. And the palliative Nigerians were asking for, give us the opportunity, the enabling environment for us to continue fending for ourselves.
Exactly.
Because no matter how much you budget into food, we know that the administrative bottlenecks, the bureaucracy, the corruption, and of course in the sector is going to not allow this to get to the people. We're not even talking about politicians who are going to stack this food in their respective warehouses, waiting for the next 4 years of elections, and then they'll bring it out, rebrand it, and give it to the same people to vote for them. So, in the last, 2-3 weeks, I've been in and out of the hospital. I could tell you vividly that a drug that was before now sold at about 8,000 naira, I was shocked to be told that same drugs is about 30,000 naira plus.
And how did it get from 8,000 to 30,000? And you're wondering, how should poor people, cater for their needs? There's a lot of questions, and this is what I'm going to say to Nigerians this morning, because sometimes you sit and you have these conversations, and you're at a loss for what solutions to prefer to the government. And even if these solutions are being preferred, like you mentioned,
they listen?
there's been some technocrats who've written directly open letters to the president, even with regards to the Niger-Ku issue. People are writing, articles are coming up. The clear thing and the body language that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has given us is that he intends to be a listening president. So more like his eyes and ears are everywhere, seeing and listening to the plight of Nigerians. But we need to see strategies that are interpreted in such a way to handle the issues on ground. But it doesn't look like we are making headway, because like you rightly said, when this batch of rice and beans and onions and whatever else that they're going to put together in small bags and deliver to citizens as palliative, when it finishes, what are people going to do? Are they going to come back and go and line up in their respective state houses, cap in hand, waiting for more cups of rice to go and feed their children. It is not viable. We are talking of sinking in probably 5 billion naira into a sector of the economy in each of these states that will facilitate small businesses, that will make fuel commodity, readily available. Why not find a way to make these things work other than, sharing paltry sums? It's not even, and it is not sustainable. To even think that we are borrowing this money to do these things that we are doing is still laughable. It's a problem, and this is what we're going to say this morning. Nigerians, if you know a better way that the federal government can help us generally, we are all Nigerians, please take advantage of social media pages, take advantage of our phone lines. We'd like to hear your thoughts. And in your environment, so far so good, have you seen your state governments moving in to take addresses, numbers of households? Remember, we are still sitting on having the census done. It was postponed for certain reasons. But if at all we get to doing census, will we be able to actualize the exact number of people that we have in this country to even be able to ascertain who the vulnerable of the most vulnerable are? When we do census, are we also going to be looking at establishing households that are doing poorly, or we're just going to be looking at just numbers? What are the indices that the census intends to cover in the coming weeks whenever the president decides that they can go ahead? Of course, they have said that the bridge and all of the time that the postponement gave to them has been able to give them room to improve upon their strategies and the technologies that they want to use in getting the census done. We cannot even separate the effect of a census on these kinds of things, but we need this modalities to be on ground, and it doesn't look like respite is coming to Nigerians anytime soon.
There are different sides to this. Talking about census, I was part of census in 2006, and I know for a fact that it took some intervention of politicians for some localities to be properly counted and documented. So without those interference, without that influence, you might not likely have everybody. I mean, those who are conducting the census are Nigerians. They are human beings. They get tired. There are situations and locations they cannot go to. Take, for instance, in Akwa Ibom, say there are places you need to go on a boat. And you're sending somebody from the north, for instance, who has never been on a boat, who doesn't know his way around water, and you think that person is going to come and cross to that area to go and count. It's not going to happen. We saw that happening. It literally, as of 2006, had to force some of the national officials that were sent here into the boat before they could get to some locations to count. So, census, will it take care of the needs of Nigerians? Will it take care of, enlisting or mapping out, the poorest of the poor, the most vulnerable families or communities in Nigeria? Definitely, I don't know at this point if it's going to happen, or maybe as a result of our conversations, they might be looking into it and considering doing that. But let's not forget also here at this point, we're already having a bickering between the federal government and the state government as far as the least of the vulnerable, the most vulnerable in Nigeria is concerned. So we've not even have, state government drawing those lists in their respective states yet. So how are we sure this palliative is not going to be, stocked away in the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months?
Francis, you're very sure that to a very large extent this palliative is going to end in news media. Really, it's not really going to get to a lot of Nigerians. We are not saying that some Nigerians won't get it, but you're going to be able to establish how you're connected to 1, 2, 3, 4 politicians to be able to get it. And literally, there are politicians that are going to call, those palliative have arrived, and I am the one in charge of the ones for my local government because I know you come over to my house at so time and get it. So there's going to be people who will be able to get bags of rice and the likes because of the connections that they have within the state government. Do we have people within the government who are willing to do the right thing by the citizens? They're very few in numbers. Sometimes, some of these people are outnumbered by the strength and corruption of other people within the system. So we are looking at a really, really major problem on our hand. How soon this can, be done away with is something we absolutely don't know. And, Nigerians have developed coping mechanisms within, in their own country just to be able to survive. But this is the clarion call to the federal government to do better by the citizens. 5 billion naira, share it across the most vulnerable in every state. Is this going to, really succor the effect of subsidy removal. But that's a question for all of us to answer, and this is a question that gives our politicians and the minders of our public service the opportunity to do right by the people that voted them into office. But yeah, let's move on to the very next story. It's Friday. We look at lifestyle related issues, and the federal road safety is part of how we can make sure that lives and property are preserved within the country, so that we can even live to tell the testimony of the renewed hope as what would I call it, as engineered by the president. We see the Corps Marshal of Federal Road Safety Corps, Dauda Bayo, order an immediate clampdown on all old and rickety vehicles across the country. Bayo gave the directives in a statement by the Corps Public Education Officer and Assistant Corps Marshal, Mr. Bisi Kazim. Of course, the FRSC is looking to get this directive as a necessity due to a trending video of an old car with 3 worn-out tires plying the highway in Shagamu, Ogun State. This is not even, it doesn't come as news to most Nigerians. I mean, if you live in the city of Lagos, for instance, you know that half the buses used to ply the roads are not roadworthy. And this happens a lot, apart from maybe like state governments that just this what would we call it, these mini buses. Yes, these mini buses were bought and shared in the states where you see most of them plying. But cities like Lagos, they don't use mini buses. Most of the buses there are really, or what we call them now, downfall buses, of course. And lives are constantly at risk because of these kinds of things. And this is a real thing on the road in Nigeria. This is a real thing on our roads, Francis.
Wait a minute. Is that a 3-tire car?
It's a 3-tire car.
Is a 4-tire but with a 3-tire car?
It's a 3-tire car on the road. What exactly is it doing on the road?
No, maybe it was parked there for repairs, because I'm wondering, how does a 4-tire vehicle drive with 3 tires?
Okay, so let's even say that this is part of propaganda to push information out, but we must agree that we have a lot of not roadworthy vehicles, and this one might even look like, okay, the third wheel is not there. What of when the 4 tires are intact but they cannot carry the burden that is in the car? Like the tires are all worn out, overused tires, overly recycled just to be able to stay in business and help. And then we have these kinds of issues, these kinds of vehicles used to overload products, and there's a lot in the maguire of this system.
Well, I understand that a lot is happening in Nigeria as far as the transportation industry is concerned. I know that all of these actions on the part of drivers endangers the lives of not just the drivers, but those passengers. And for those who are strictly for packing of goods or transporting of goods, they pose a great risk and great danger to the larger society. But for the FRSC, there are different sides of this, and I beg to be excused by sane Nigerians, educated Nigerians, enlightened Nigerians who do things the right way, members of our respective security agencies who actually do right when they're on the road. But if we have to be honest with ourselves, there are different reasons why we have these kinds of vehicles on the road. First and foremost, let's look at the economy. How is it faring with transporters at this point in time? How much are they being able to save to be able to fix the vehicles? How much are vehicle spare parts costing right now? Look at tire prices going high. Tires that I recall buying Tukumbo tires for 15,000 naira, 10,000 naira, 20,000 naira. But today the story is completely different. You cannot find those kinds of tires, functional tires, good tires that you can use. Literally now, it wasn't the case. You buy a tire today, even at the expenses you're being given. You wake up to drive that tire, you discover the next 2 days is worn out, and you are asking, how are tires made? Who give the clearance for these kinds of tires to be imported into the country? Who are those saddled with the responsibility for ensuring that what comes into this country is good for the Nigerian people? So it's a whole lot. It's not just about the FRSC issuing a directive, going after rickety looking vehicles. What are we doing? Because whether you like it or yes, people get tired. People would get tired. I personally would get tired of buying one and the same thing every time for my vehicle, and it's not serving. So if we get to before we even get to look at clamming down, in as much as that is good and in the interest of Nigerians, let's look at the quality of spare parts, the quality of materials being imported into Nigeria. Because the average motorist cannot continue to buy. If, for instance, okay, let's lose tricycle riders. You go and buy carburetor that is supposed to last you for a period of time, and you discover after using it for just 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, it's gone. Even worse than the one you were managing. So is that keke rider going to go back and buy another carburetor in the next how many months? It's not going to happen. The same thing is applicable to tires and every other spare part. So yes, we commend the FRSC for coming out to say, you know what, we've had enough of vehicles on our roads that are not roadworthy. But beyond that, can we also have the authorities of Nigeria, look into different issues that comes with quality of things imported into Nigeria? Can we also look at fixing the economy so that, when somebody now drives a rickety looking vehicle, that the country's economy, everything is normal enough for any right thinking person who values his life and the lives of his passengers or those on the road he is flying to actually fix the vehicle.
You've raised really pertinent concerns that even takes our attention off the move of the FRSC at this point, looking at all the, what would I call it, bottlenecks that manufacturers are having to experience at this time. Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, MAN, has cried out, asking and telling the government that most of their participants, people who do businesses in Nigeria, are getting out of business because modalities to produce and manufacture within the country have become highly difficult. We are talking forex problems. We are talking about the fact that electricity does not work in Nigeria. We're talking about that there are no enabling environment for businesses to thrive within the country. So we also see that people who even attempt to keep themselves in business by any means, some of them vie into buying substandard products to make to produce some of these things that they produce, and the resultant effect of some of the issues that you're raising this morning, of which is the biggest cry. So we are also looking at the fact that motorists are clamoring that the high cost of petrol is a problem. We are also looking at the fact that spare parts and other things that help our cars to be roadworthy are not even there. And another big issue here is the fact that we also see that the statistics for road crashes in the first 6 months of the year alone is alarming. We have about 4,387 lives that have been lost for the data that has been able to be collated, in the country in the past 6 years. Well, in the past 6 months, I beg your pardon. We're also looking at the fact that sometimes, I don't know how recently you've seen that, you drive on the roads and you find out that a car had got a fire. Cars just got in fire. What are the contributory factors of all of these things? Electrical faults in cars. You're hearing this flowed into this when it wasn't, and then a car got fire. So there's a lot of issues that we should be looking at, and I think that you have raised the most pertinent conversation around this issue this morning. Let us look at how we import worthy goods into the country across all sectors now, and also make sure that these things serve the due purpose. I think it was just this week we're having a conversation with someone, and someone said these same products you bought maybe last year or 2 years ago, they are not the same quality. Everything, even as low as biscuits. Biscuits have been watered down. Sometimes you're going to find out that it has the same 10 sticks inside, but you see that the value of the 10 stick is something else. So it is affecting literally everything in the country. So the minders of the system need to go back and do some homework, far better than the conversations that we're having and the press statements that we are releasing.
Well, the press statements are not going to stop coming, but I'll always add that the federal government, the minders of the system, needs to do a lot more than press statement. And when we're even talking about FRSC, let's talk about leadership and leading with example. I have seen FRSC vehicles who are also not roadworthy, but those vehicles are on the road.
Are you talking of Nigerian police force vehicles also?
So how do you come to enforce law on Nigerians whose vehicles are not roadworthy when your own vehicle is not roadworthy? And I think we should get to a point in Nigeria where Nigerians will begin to have citizen arrests for government officials, government agencies. So if you're standing on the road and a road safety vehicle is passing by and it's not roadworthy, arrest the vehicle. We should get to the point of leading by example. Yes, we want, all the rickety looking vehicles off our road. We want to secure lives and properties. But let's also look at fixing things. Because if we don't, you see this prosecution of a thing, the end result is going to skyrocket the number of accidents. Because guess what? When the FRSC court marshals are on the road to enforce this directive by the authorities of the FRSC, the first reactions of motorists on the road when they spot an FRSC vehicle is to run. And as far as Nigeria is concerned, we have seen different accidents happening because the FRSC themselves, who are supposed to be trained officials to know how to react to such scenarios, will enter their vehicle, pursue the vehicle without knowing that there are other road users. And the end result is always accident leading to loss of lives and properties. So while we're trying to enforce this law, let us look at the indices. Let us look at what needs to be done to encourage people to do the right thing. I'm not saying that having a rickety vehicle on the road is good. It's bad. It's condemnable. But there are some persons. It's just like even now we're getting to the ember months. We will begin to hear renewal of licenses and all of those things. People will tell, it's not like these guys don't know they need to renew. It's not like they don't know they need to take care of their cars. But when somebody comes out in a day, for instance, in a week, you're struggling to make 10,000 naira.
Exactly. As opposed to what
you used to make. How do you even, you're not even able to feed your family yet. Talk less of looking on fixing the vehicle or making it better.
Francis, another idea is springing up. Now, we know that in most, forward-thinking nations, more developed nations, I'd rather say, we have systems where these kinds of vehicles get into certain ports and are revamped. It takes us back to conversations in manufacturing. And the fact that Nigerians, most of us have this system of we do not know how to rehabilitate things. We do not know, how to make things work again for us. I think we have a phone call. We'll just take that particular one this morning, and we'll get right into it. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. This is Spectrum Television. Thank you for joining us. Your name and where you're calling from?
My name is Tony. I'm calling from Otipo in Benue State.
To hear your voice.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Tony. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, it's a good idea. But I don't think anybody would like to use a motor that is outdated. This government, they are not even trying to face the problem people have. Scrapping all the motor that is not roadworthy is good. But the truth of the matter is that road safety, this thing will just end up in paper and television and all these things. They are not going to do it. We use this vehicle and somebody that travel often and often. And we know what road safety they are doing on the road. They are just there like a dream market. For the first time that road safety came out, they are not collecting bribe. But I'm telling you now, if you go on the road, you see that they are after money. So if they are going to do it, let's see. But as I'm telling you, believe me, it will just end up in paper and television and all this things. They are not going to enforce anything. But what I'm begging the government to do is this. Create a enable grant for people to run their things. As far back as 1985, 86, Nigeria, they are not using vehicle more than 1 year. They will just use it 2 years. They sell it and buy another one. That very time, there is new brand vehicle in Nigeria. Nobody is happy using outdated motor. But this is where we find ourselves in the country. Some motor has spent up to 30 years, and the owner is still using it. Nobody is happy using motor that is up to 30 years. But we are finding ourselves in such situation that you use motor up to 30 years and you cannot be able to change motor that you are using. It's quite unfortunate. Thank you and good morning.
Thank you so much, Tony, as they're calling us from Benue State. Very salient points raised there by Tony this morning. We are looking at the fact that the enabling environment is not there for people to be able to do businesses and even afford the kind of life they wanted to. It was something I was heading to before we had to take that beautiful call this morning. The fact that in developed nations, you have modalities in place where people can get these cars and they pay tokens, every now and then to be able to renew their cars. So you see that in most nations, just like he has said, people will not use cars for more than 2-3 years, and then they will hand it down and get something else, just so that these things are more roadworthy. But we don't have those kinds of structures in place. But I know that economists and business persons have a whole conversation around mortgage buying, buy now pay later kind of initiatives. I know there's a whole lot of conversation around there, but we must also accept the fact that these kinds of modalities also make life bearable for middle class persons, the poor in the society. The average poor person in some of these developed in some of these developed countries, they have at least a car to their family that is roadworthy, and they can use it to go about their activities. And I was also going to talk about recycling, in the country. Where do we have, for instance, that we can take these cars that are no longer motorable, get new parts, get new metal works, get new engines, and assemble a new car out of what has now become scrap? But no, we don't have these kinds of things in our country. As of now, we are looking out more into, let's be able to make more enabling environments so that we can import more cars. How about we have structures in the country that rehabilitates these old cars and sell it at very affordable prices for the vulnerable in the society? They can use it for transport businesses. They can use it to transport, their food items. There's a lot we can do as a country, Francis.
There's definitely a lot we can do, and if Nigeria was a country with leaders thinking about strengthening the people's means of livelihood, if we had the government being more considerate and more people focused than just wielding out policy statements that are meant to should I say entertain Nigerians rather than impact on the lives of Nigerians.
Yeah, that was something our guest just called. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
So if we are able to get to that point, we definitely will solve a lot of problems in Nigeria. When people japa, and the Nigerian government is trying to say, we should have Nigerians not jackparing or not going out of the country for greener pastures. It comes down to these different basic things. I've had several conversations with friends, colleagues who are outside the shores of Nigeria. They tell you we don't have a problem paying for things, because when you're paying for something, you know that you're seeing that thing, you're enjoying that service. So it is not a burden of you thinking, I'm paying for something I'm not going to enjoy. You're paying and you're seeing the reward of what you're paying for. So it doesn't pain, it doesn't hurt, because you're getting quality. For what you're spending
able to just work and use your money and do what you want to do.
And life is easy for you. That is what Nigerians want. We're complaining that Nigerians don't pay tax, Nigerians don't pay electricity bills, Nigerians don't do this, they don't do that. Have we put in place modalities, systems to ensure that quality is being given to Nigerians for how much they are paying? Because when you see value for that thing you're spending your money on, there is literally no right thing in people. Even a madman will still want to pay for the services is being given.
We're also not considering the effect of these road accidents and other things as caused by these rickety vehicles on the road. The people that are accidented, vehicles that get spoiled, we're still talking about the economic occurrences. We're also talking about people lose their lives and families are put into a lot of jeopardy as a result of this. So, but this has to be looked at holistically. But Tony has said something very imperative this morning. Is this just another propaganda put out by the FRSC? Do they really intend to clamp down on on roadworthy vehicles and other issues related to road accidents, or they just want one more thing that the media gets to talk about but nobody really implements it across the country? Of course, there are promises that the FRC is going to implement this across the 36 states of the Federation and the FCT, but like most Nigerians will continue to say, until we see this work done, we'll cut down on the celebration and how much hands we clap for when we hear these kinds of initiative. But let's just let these stories rest at this point. Just one last thing we can quickly look at is the fact that ECOWAS is saying that troops of the Economic Community of West African States are pledging their readiness to participate in a standby force that could restore civil rule in Niger Republic. Now, should diplomatic efforts to reverse all the coup there fail, all member states of the ECOWAS, except those under military rule and Cape Verde, pledged to participate in the standby force at a meeting in Accra, Ghana. Of course, this meeting was holding yesterday. Now, addressing the assembled defense chiefs of ECOWAS member country, the Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security, Abdel Fattah Musa, let no one be in doubt. If everything else fails, the valiant forces of West Africa are ready to answer to the call of duty. Now, they said by all means available constitutional order will be restored in the country. So we see the fact that this meeting in Ghana yesterday still did not rule out the possible use of force if other routes to solve this issue, including dialogue and negotiation, fails.
I was still to the part of good-minded citizens in Nigeria who have said war should be taken off the table. Military action should be taken off the table, because with military actions comes casualties, and those casualties may likely not be much on the military junta's side, because these guys are ready. As much as we know that, you're talking about combined forces, and let's not even, I think yesterday I watched, a security expert talking about advising the presidency. Say, you're first and foremost the president of Nigeria.
Exactly.
Don't forget that Niger has a lot of borders with Nigeria. And don't forget that already, with what is happening, Nigerians are suffering. And it's not just Nigerians, but other, African countries. So, before you get to think of jumping into war, look at the effect. Ukraine, Russia.
We're still telling the story.
They thought it's going to be a walk in the park kind of thing. But how many months has it been? We're gradually moving into years, and the war is still going. Thousands of lives are being wasted. Thousands of families are thrown into humanitarian crisis and all of that. Can we get to a point of fixing the problem first that brings in the coup? Can we get to a point of talking? Because the military junta has said, this is why we actually did this. Is it constitutional? No. Were they right in taking that action? No. But have you looked at the reason why they took those actions? Because when you push somebody so hard that they get to the wall and there is no breathing space, no escape route, the only other option is to rebound. So, experts in the human rights organizations, civil society organizations are telling the presidency, are telling ECOWAS, please, let's continue with dialogue. Let's find a way to get the military junta to restore the democratically elected president without necessarily going to war.
I think one would even think that, at this point, the leadership of ECOWAS should have found a way to sit, even the ousted president Mohamed Bazoum and the leadership of the military, coup, to sit down on a round table. Let's see, what are your grievances? What are the coup's grievances against democratically elected government as led by Mohamed Bazoum? And let's just look at it on a round table. What are the ways that ECOWAS, as the bloc controlling the West African state, how can they come in and mitigate in the democratically gone wrong issues in Niger Republic? So these are some of the things that should be looked at. Like you said, war is really not an option at this time. Most of the world is grappling with a global recession. Most of Africa does not have what it takes financially to take on a war at this time. And let's not talk about the fact that lives will be lost. I think it was someone that was giving an example. The kings will be in their palaces sipping tea. The soldiers will be the ones to go to war. And once again, the most vulnerable in these societies who cannot afford to whip out a passport and travel to another country will be most affected if this war breaks out. So as we say, let the ECOWAS bloc find out and take the best possible route to resolve this issue, of which most Nigerians and most experts are saying negotiations and dialogue is the best way to go. But Mary Joseph is on standby to bring us news brief. At this point, we head straight to her, and when we return, we'll be looking at more topical issues affecting the country, affecting our health and other related issues. So do stay with us.
government, Secretary General, delegates.
Disasters being Lagos, Nigeria for Spectrum TV to recover from the lapses in cognitive counting.
A very good morning to you and welcome to your morning news brief on Spectrum, live from Uyo. I am Mary Joseph. We begin the news brief with the report that the Special Advisor to the President on Revenue, Dr. Adelabo Adedeji, says illicit financial flows, unless checked, will continue to significantly erode domestic revenues, enable corruption, and threaten economic stability and sustainable development. The presidential aide spoke in Abuja at a one-day hybrid sensitization workshop on the published guidelines for private sector response to illicit financial flows, vulnerabilities in Nigeria, organized by the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission. Meanwhile, the Corps Marshal Federal Road Safety Corps, Dawudu Biya, has ordered an immediate clampdown on all old and racketeering vehicles across the country. BU gave the directives in a statement by the Corps Public Education Officer and Assistant Corps Marshal Dr. B.C. Kazim on Thursday in Abuja. On development, the Niger troops of the Economic Community of West African States have pledged readiness to participate in a standby force that could restore civil rule in Niger Republic should diplomatic efforts to reserve a coup there fail. Addressing the assembled defense chiefs from ECOWAS member countries, the Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security, Abdel Fattah Massao, let no one be in doubt if everything else fails. The valiant forces of West Africa are ready to answer to the call of duty. We head straight to the foreign scene now, where a Ukrainian drone attack has hit a building in Moscow, causing an explosion that was heard across the city's business districts, Russian officials have said. Mayor Sergei Saboyany said air defenses has shot down the drone with its debris falling on the city's expo center in a series of such attacks on the Russian capital. Unverified footage of social media appeared to show thick gray smoke rising in the night sky over Moscow. And finally, in sports, the world's women's 100-meter hurdles champion, Nigeria's Tobias Musa, has reacted to being cleared by the Athletics Integrity Unit for whereabout failures. This means that Musa, 26, can now compete at the 2023 World Athletics Championships, set to begin Saturday in Budapest, Hungary. We'll have details of this and more in our news at 12. I am Mary Joseph. Let's head back to Rise and Shine, where we have Francis and Uyai on standby. Do have a lovely weekend.
Government, Secretary General, delegates.
Disasters being Lagos, Nigeria for Spectrum TV to recover from the lapses in cognitive counting.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people. But there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTime's DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
One truth not often told is about the transformation that Africa has undergone in recent decades. Africa is shaping its own destiny and should be referred to as the African opportunity. On Spotlight Africa, we paint the African picture the African way, laced with truth, detail, and the color of the African continent. Join Uyai Anyekan every Tuesday and Thursdays at 4:30 p.m. Spotlight Africa, telling the African story.
Every society is premised on the quality of relationships forged by its inhabitants. The health of these relationships determines how well people, relationships, organizations thrive and how long they stick together. Join Uyai Anyekan on Connect every Wednesday from 6 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. and on Sunday 2:30 to 3 p.m. on channel 421 on Star Times to catch all the conversations, interviews, real stories and how to navigate relationships and family life in the 21st century. Real people, real faces, real stories. Connect live on Spectrum Television.
Glad to welcome you back. It's still Rise and Shine, and we're beaming live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State, talking Nigeria and the latest happening across the respective state. We started off with the palliative, where we've seen already bickering between the APC and the PDP government of Osun State Adeleke as concerns the 5 billion palliative that has been given to the respective states of the Federation, and the scare Nigerians are facing on the question as to whether or not we might be seeing the palliative ending in warehouses when we have to go by the accusation level against the governor of Osun State. It's been 2 weeks, barely 2 weeks, since the palliative arrived at Osun State, but it is yet to be distributed to the people. We move to the directive by the FRSC, who has directed that rickety-looking vehicles will no longer be tolerated on Nigerian roads. And of course, we have conversations about the fact that a lot of issues need to be addressed, from the quality of product, vehicle spare parts being imported into the country, to the economy, and to also, looking at the certain realities that are, behind the facts or reasons why most people do not even get to, fix their vehicles. We move away from that to the fact that the Niger coup has still generated a lot of reactions, with the military forces of ECOWAS declaring that they're combat ready in the event that, every other avenue of negotiation falls out or fails to ensure the restoration of the democratically elected President Bazoum, who was ousted on the 26th of July. But we still have a lot of conversations around that we need to talk about, but I think at this point, we'll just take a pause and head out to Daily Spotlights, where we'll take you around the front pages of Nigerian newspapers.
Daily Spotlight, bringing you information from the front pages of our national dailies. Let's take a quick swipe at the Vanguard this morning. Very big story there on our first paper. Says we'll invade Niger if diplomacy fails. ECOWAS says past deployments in Sierra Leone, Liberia offers example of readiness. Germany backs EU sanctions against military junta. WFP calls for free flow of aid amid ongoing crisis. 3 officers, 22 soldiers killed in Niger ambush crash. DHQ, page 7. Okay, you can find details of all that on page 5 and page 7. We also see here credit to government rises further by 3.5% to 32.3 trillion naira. Page 19 is where you can find the details. Emefiele, federal government showing signs of disobeying court orders, says judge. Court strikes out firearms possession charge. Page 3 is where you can find the details. Subsidy removal, no instant solutions to Nigeria's problems, says Tinubu. Page 3. Transcorp acquires 60% stake in Abuja Discor. Page 19 is where you can find the details. We also see here subsidy removal. Federal government shocked over high food and transportation cost. Approves 5 billion naira, 5 trucks of rice to each state. Mandate NEMA to distribute food items to states sharing borders with Niger. Says refugees from Niger Republic flood Nigeria. Only 2 billion naira released yet, says Governor Sani. We also have here, still looking at the front page of the Vanguard, flawed. We are burdened by over 6,000 IDPs. Niger government, page 14. We also have here over 1,680 Nigerian school children kidnapped since Chibok incident, says SCI, page 9. And of course, Vanguard Sports this morning says club honors task new sports minister, Senator Eno, on football development. And that's all we have on the front page of the Vanguard.
The next up this morning is the Nation newspaper. On the front page of the Nation, the kicker there says states awash with 180 billion naira subsidy pain relief cash. The rider there on the front page of the Nation says Federal government's 5 billion per state fund for immediate use to cushion high food fertilizer prices. NEC OK's transfer of World Bank's $800 million to the poor. Talks with Labour to go on. You can find that story on page 4 of the Nation newspaper. Still on the front page, Emefiele charged with fraud, abuse of office orders in Abuja. That's on page 6 of the Nation newspaper. We have to a very interesting turn for the sports sector, where Tobias Mosun has been declared for World Championship. Niger echoes activate standby force. Defense chiefs in Ghana rather there. We also have a transport consolidates power delivery in Africa. Transcom consolidates power delivery in Africa. That's on page 7. Gandija leads Suzodima Okorocha to Aso Villa. That's on page 6 of the Nation newspaper. Those are the major stories you find on the front page of the Nation this morning.
Moving away from the Nation, let's take a look at the Nigerian Tribune. Nigerian Tribune this morning, the big story there says, palliative states get 5 billion each, 185 trucks rise. NEC constitutes ad hoc committee to dialogue with Labour. Laments dwindling foreign investments inflow. Page 3 is where you can find the details. Ipman, ANED, ship owners, farmers, others set key targets for Edu, Ekpo, Tunji Ojo, Adelabu, Lokpo Biri. Tunji Ojo should empower indigenous shipping lines, disburse $700 million CVFF in 6 months. Edu must ensure fiscal balance, spending efficiency, and debt sustainability. We also see here Nigeria should not backtrack on PMS subsidy removal, says World Bank, page 3. We also have here Ibadan residents protest at Oyo Secretariat over sealing of houses by Mogaji. Pages 26 is where you can find the details. We also have here NDIC hints on investigating directors of 183 failed microfinance banks, PMBs. Page 6 is where you can find the detail of that. We also see here ECOWAS says we are going into Niger if all else fails. AIU, Tobias Mosun not guilty. Details are on the back page of the Nigerian Tribune. 3 officers, 22 soldiers killed in Niger ambush, says THQ. And that's all we have on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune.
And next up this morning is the front page of the Daily Times newspaper. The kicker there says FG is lawless, George. And of course, the writer there says, for lack of respect for court, no response from government council. You can find that how we lost 22 soldiers, orders to terrorists in Niger by military authority. Front page palliatives, 1 million bags of rice, 40,000 of maize per state underway. 100 number 8 of the Daily Times newspaper. Former envoy berates Saludo over treatment of PWDs. That's on page 9 of the Daily Times news.
We have this morning. Okay, Francis has one more for us. I think we haven't taken the Punch newspaper. Let me take the Punch. Look at Punch. Major stories still cutting across this morning. Labour faults 180 billion naira palliative, says government will frustrate program. NEC committee to meet Labour over subsidy relief. Tinubu appeals to Nigerians. There's a disturbing picture story here of Emefiele. Of course, DSS drops firearms charges, and 6.9 billion naira fraud case adjourned. Only Ford's release of Lagos season. Well, we also see here federal government begins ministers designate Northwest plunge into 902 billion naira debt. Poor revenue. Page 12 is where you can find details, and that's all we have on the front page of the Punch.
Well, that's about does it for today's Daily Spotlight. A lot of stories on the front page of paper this morning. It's a little bit. I don't know, mixed emotions for Nigerians, mixed emotions for a lot. What can 180 billion do if we actually sat down to look past? You're looking at the money, first and foremost. if that were invested into the MSME sector, invested into, stabilize the business environment, injected into, that would have been a lot more better. That would have been a lot more sustainable than just bags of rice, bags of beans. Nigerians can still get by because with every passing day, it spike up. When people are hungry, justice is being meted out on somebody for stealing a bunch of banana.
To say, because it's one thing for the papers and the allocation, how much was allocated as against what was budgeted for these agencies. So when Nigeria is at the moment and the kinds of hopes and expectations that Nigerians are having, I know that somewhere on one of the papers we looked at this morning, President Tinubu had said that there is no immediate solutions to the problems that Nigerians are facing. The question we made into this segment. When we return, of course, Rise and Shine continues. To stay tuned.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people, but there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTimes DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
Nigerian police force, which is the only one allowed by grossly abused. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigeria police force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by
the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My Lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people?
It's he linked you with the attempted murder of Hebrew.
He did not.
My lord, the matters cancelled.
Proceeding.
It's not, my lord. This case is in court.
It deals with legal issues and PM for Legally Speak.
Spectrum TV, broadening your horizon.
Welcome back and thanks for joining us. If you're just joining us, this is Rise and Shine, and we're coming to you live from Uyo. Follow us across all social media platforms, all of which you can find at spectrumtv.ng. Of course, we are live online. At this point, we're going to be moving into an interview segment where we focus on certain issues. And today we're talking tuberculosis and COVID-19 vaccinations. I know a lot of people stringent measures that they put in place. China has opened up its borders for people to continue trading and other related activities, and we see that Tedros Ghebreyesus had reported the fact that totally left the scene. The answer is a big no. People are still coming down with COVID-19. There's still need for vaccination, although that conversation has been a bit watered down in recent times. But we have a guest joining us virtually this morning to talk on the need to have these vaccinations and also look at the conversation around tuberculosis this morning. Good morning, Rose Ifon. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yes, how is Uyo? This it's raining on this side of Akwa Ibom. I don't
along Asomama, it's raining.
Okay.
Actually. But the rain has started subsiding, yeah.
Okay, so you are a TBLF expert that talks about people who handle a lot of cases related to tuberculosis and other issues in Eket local government. Yes. So it's like yes. There's a celebration this week, or we are connoting a particular week, paying particular attention to tuberculosis vaccination and how to handle TB generally. So take us, backward a little bit. What is tuberculosis about, and how do people even come under the influence of this disease?
Okay, thank you very much for that question. Tuberculosis is actually a chronic infectious disease that is caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis, and it affects mostly the lungs, but it can also affect other parts of the organs in the body. And people contact it by inhaling the bacteria. Yeah, that is it's airborne transmitted. That's how people contact it. That is, if they happen to expose.
We lost her there. We do hope that the rains will allow our internet to flow very smoothly this morning. But of course, we're going to be looking at tuberculosis. I remember that when we were young. Okay, you can go ahead.
Yeah, the person will come out, will be infected with it. And if the immune system of that person is low, then the person might come up with the tuberculosis disease.
Okay, so I know that in time past, it was more like tuberculosis was a death sentence. Once a person would come down with TB, it said, oh, everyone would try to stay away from that person, and literally people would just wait for when the person dies. But with the advent of technology and developments with pharmaceuticals, is tuberculosis a death sentence?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. Tuberculosis is not a death sentence. Actually, the TB, the infection is curable. It's curable. We can actually cure tuberculosis. So that has been a challenge for us, because some people thought when they are infected with this infection that means that is the final death for them, and that people tend to stigmatize them. So it is not a death sentence, because there are drugs that you be on it and it is curable. And the good news is that the treatment is free.
The treatment for TB is free. So let's piggyback on how can people realize what are the symptoms to look out for? What does the person see and need to get to a facility to get tested for tuberculosis?
Okay, yeah, the symptoms one have to look out for is we have what we call the cardinal signs. of tuberculosis, and that has to be cough. The person, this persistent cough for up to 2 weeks. Maybe the person has been able to take some antibiotics or other treatment, but the cough is still on and it's up to 2 weeks or more. Then you just think tuberculosis. And for persons that are living with HIV/AIDS, you don't have to wait for 2 weeks. It's cough of no duration. At any time the person starts coughing, you should think tuberculosis. Then we have other symptoms, signs and symptoms that one can look out for, like chest pain, like night sweat, profuse night sweat. That is the person that finds himself sweating excessively at night, even when the weather is cold, even when there is fan, this person is still sweating. You also have a case like loss of appetite. It could be hemoptysis. Some people cough out the sputum, and the cough contains blood in it. Then we can think tuberculosis. Then excessive tiredness. At times, maybe you want to do something for a long time, but now a little time, I think a little exertion, the person will just look so tired. Then you have to think tuberculosis. And
okay, of course, we're talking about tuberculosis this morning and some of the predisposing factors and how what someone would experience first of all before they need to go and get a proper diagnosis of the disease. Of course, we are speaking with Rose Ifon, who is joining us from Uyo this morning. She's talked about the fact that insistent cough for more than 2 weeks will, instigate that you go to a facility and get tested. Drenching sweat in spite of a moderate temperature in your room at night is something that should, cause you, it will raise an alarm for you to get to a facility. So some other question I want to ask this morning, Rose. Upon finding out that someone, has tested positive to tuberculosis, the medication for TB, is it a lifelong medication? Are you there? Can you hear us clearly this morning?
Okay, John. It is not a lifelong medication. Yeah, I can hear you clearly. The medication is not a lifelong treatment. The treatment for tuberculosis actually lasted for 6 months, just 6 months, and you are cured. Within that 6 months, we'll be doing some follow-up at the 2nd month, month 2, the 5th month, and the 6th month. And if the whole of that gives us a negative result, then you are cured. It's not a lifelong treatment.
Okay, so in terms of tuberculosis, is there vaccination available that people can take, just like we vaccinate our children when they're born early? Are there vaccinations that people can take that will keep them away from ever coming down with tuberculosis? And, when and how can these vaccinations be taken? How readily available are they also in the States for, as of the moment?
Okay. Actually, we don't have vaccination for it. The only one we have, that is the BCG, that is given to babies. That is when they are born. And the BCG cannot prevent one from coming up with tuberculosis. It can only prevent the baby from coming up with a very serious kind of infection. That is like TB meningitis or maybe miliary TB, but it cannot really prevent. So what we do, what is done is that contacts of clients that have been infected with tuberculosis, we now do the contacts, and their contacts, we place them on some drugs. We call it 3HR, that is 3 months of rifampicin and isoniazid. When they are on that drugs for 3 months, they will not, they will be prevented. They will not come up with the infection. And little children that are exposed to patients with tuberculosis. So there is no vaccine for it for now.
Okay.
That is it.
So this is the National Tuberculosis Testing Week. What are the agencies, the health agencies in Akwa Ibom State doing, and how do we intend to go about this, testing week? It's an entire week. Are you just getting into the streets and testing people randomly? What are the modalities in place to make sure that a lot of people are tested, those found positive are given adequate treatment? Like you had said earlier, it is free. But what is the National Tuberculosis Testing Week about?
Yeah, actually, it is about getting the information.
Okay, Rosie Fon, of course, is speaking to us from Uyo this morning. And between the 14th and the 20th of August has been the National Tuberculosis Testing Week. Nationally, in the whole country, there is more emphasis laid on tuberculosis testing, and also making sure that the numbers of people living with tuberculosis is strongly brought down by the books. And of course, we are looking at how this is going to affect the overall numbers if people are adequately tested. And out there also to be done this morning is to push out that information, and that is what Rose Ifon is doing with us this morning. So please go ahead. You were talking about the National Testing Week for tuberculosis, and how this is going to affect the overall of the incident in the country.
Yeah.
So you can go ahead and speak. We can hear you clearly.
Okay. Yeah. Actually, what I was saying is that because of the activities of this week, what we are expecting is that the information about the existence of tuberculosis is going to be put across to people, and awareness, like the breakthrough action, are actually on it, and then everybody will come to know that TB is still in existence, and then they will now come out to be tested. Now, in all the local government, they have put some designated places. But if they go to facilities, the local government health centers, general hospitals, they will be tested. And if any of them is tested positive, drugs are available. So it's just a week that we focus on tuberculosis testing, so that we can pick these people early, because early detection.
The network is really getting on the way, but of course I think she's talking about the fact that early detection is really really good for tuberculosis. Once you get tested early, then you can get the help that you must. She had established earlier that tuberculosis treatment nationwide is free of charge, so wherever you are across the country, no one ought to be charging you to get tuberculosis treated. And then again, another conversation that we've touched on this morning is the fact that there is absolutely no need to be stigmatized because you have tuberculosis, and whoever is still functioning under that kind of atmosphere where you are stigmatized because of tuberculosis, it is not a necessity. Go ahead and step out and get this medication that is readily available. Rosie Fan, I'd like to ask, we apologize for the interference of the network this morning, but we'd like to establish the testing for tuberculosis. Is it free nationwide? I know you said getting medication is free, but getting the testing done, is that also free? I don't know if you can hear us. You can go ahead to answer the question. There seems to be a delay and freezing with the network this morning. But of course, this is the National Tuberculosis Testing Week, where health facilities across the country. All right, please go ahead. Please go ahead and respond to the question. I think this is grossly freezing, and we still have COVID-19 conversations to run by Rose Ifon this morning. Like I had established earlier, there's been a clampdown on a lot of COVID-19 restrictions. Most nations of the world, if not all as of now, have lifted all kinds of sanctions and bans placed as a result of COVID-19. China earlier on last week had opened up its borders and allowed for tourism activities to continue within the country. And we have seen the WHO call out the fact that COVID-19 cases are no longer reported as should across the world. The numbers are, strongly dropping at this time. Rosie Fan, I don't know if the network is good now on your end, but we'll quickly run into the COVID-19 vaccination conversation just in a quick bit before the network plays a fast one and all. So let's talk COVID-19. We know that it was a really, really strong situation somewhere around 2020, 2021. Most nations shut down and vaccinations were a strong conversation. But having seen, most of these sanctions being lifted, are there still vaccinations available on ground for people to have? And are Nigerians still coming forward to get COVID-19 vaccinations?
Still, the health sector has it, but the issue is that there's some Nigerians are still skeptical about the existence of COVID-19, and that is making some of them not to actually come. But people are still coming. Awareness are still created, but to be vaccinated, the vaccines are still available. Is also free, just as any other thing.
Okay, so are there moves anytime soon to monetize the vaccination of COVID-19? Because there has been the speculation somewhere around, whispers here and there that as the holistic view on COVID-19 has come down, nations will begin to sell the vaccination for COVID. Is that something that you can support or debunk from the health worker perspective?
Yes, I will just debunk it because it's free. There is you don't pay for it. Vaccination against COVID-19 is free. So I don't think we have started collecting money for it. It is not true. It's not true.
Okay, so something else I'd like to bring to your attention is the fact that COVID-19 is still here amongst us in our society. I know that a lot of people do not even remember where they kept their packs of nose masks or even their hand sanitizers anymore. But, WHO is saying COVID-19 is still a case, but that it is currently underreported. In the facilities across the country, let's take Akwa Ibom, for instance, as sample, because we are in Akwa Ibom and you work in Akwa Ibom. Are COVID-19 cases still reported to the center, NCDC in Akwa Ibom, up to the national levels? Because WHO is saying the numbers with reporting has drastically dropped. So we don't even know what we have on our hands as COVID-19. Don't forget that the WHO is also saying that more variants of the virus keep coming out every now and then.
Okay, yeah, the number is dropped because that is why we still have to do more in creating awareness and letting people know that vaccine is available. Because if people don't take advantage of this vaccination and they come up with the infection, it's not going to help. So it's still because of the way people are still taking these issues that maybe COVID-19 there is nothing like that again. That's why we are still here on A, that the different variants are still coming up, and that people should go and get vaccinated, because when they get vaccinated, at least they will be COVID-19. And people should not also forget the use of their nose mask and hand sanitizer.
So I'm just going to I'm going to quickly put you on the spot. Okay, I'm going to quickly put you on the spot. As a health worker in Akwa Ibom, are you still using your nose mask and your hand sanitizers? I don't know if Rosie Fon can still hear us, but we need to know that the minders of our system are still living by example. So, Rosie Fon, I was asking, do you still use your nose mask and your hand sanitizers?
Hand sanitizers, we still use it. Even like myself, my hand sanitizer is always in my bag. As I'm packing my bag, hand sanitizer is part of the things inside my handbag. So we still use. You go to health worker facilities, you always see hand sanitizers on the table for people to use.
All right.
So we are still using hand sanitizers.
Okay, so just to wrap up the conversation this morning with regards to TB testing done nationally in the country and vaccination and COVID-19, what are your general thoughts? What do you think that Nigerians should know about these two diseases at this time?
Yeah, what we have to know is that these two diseases they actually attack the immune system of the persons that has it. So if somebody is infected with COVID-19, the person's immune system will be low. And then if such a person is exposed to TB, the person will contract TB easily. So I want everybody to know that TB and COVID-19 are still present in our midst, in our neighborhood, and that if you have not yet get vaccinated, please go. Then if you have these signs and symptoms of TB, please, you can come out, go to the health facilities and get yourself screened and tested so that you can be treated early. That's what I want everybody to know.
Get yourself screened and tested for tuberculosis and also for COVID-19. These are diseases that are still prevalent amongst us. Thank you so much, Rosie Fon, of course, the TBLF expert in Akwa Ibom State, for giving us your time and sharing your wealth of knowledge with us on Rise and Shine this morning.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me. I'm grateful.
All right. Do enjoy the rest of your day and a splendid rest of the week with testing people for tuberculosis.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Of course, this has been Rise and Shine, looking at very serious conversations. Health is wealth. And as part of the things we are debunking in this season for Nigerians, is as much as possible, please do try to stay healthy, as everything has skyrocketed, including the price of pharmaceutical products. You really do not want to come down with any kind of diseases at this time. So you'd like to increase your intake of lots of water, lots of fluid. You like to top up your vitamin C. You like to sleep as much as possible on a good and clean condition. You also want to, as much as possible, exercise, taking lots of food. But also, NAFDAC is calling our attention to the fact that we are having a lot of carbide ripened fruits. So you need to be careful. If you can, go directly to a farm and see them pluck your fruit for you whilst you buy them, so that we are careful not to be ingesting more troubles in the bid to get fruits. But we need to do the much that we can to stay afloat as citizens of this very precious country in Nigeria. But this is the much we can absolutely take on Rise and Shine today. It's been a bumper ride with you from Monday through to Friday, and we thank you for every contribution, for every call, for every text, for every activity on the social media platforms. We absolutely appreciate you. But that's where we draw the curtains for Rise and Shine Daily. Until next week, Monday, my name is Uyai Aneka. Thanks for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day.